Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Al Fadi, and I hope that you are just enjoying watching these episodes of this fascinating series about the historical criticism of the origin of Islam, early Islam. And of course, I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface in the last few episodes. We're just talking about important things related to the sources of Islam, the problem of the sources, and also the alleged witnesses which we have today, like for instance the hadith or the seerah or even the tafsir and the tarikh and all that kind of stuff. And this is important, of course, for us to highlight and put the spotlight on because of the time gap when we put all of these dates, the sources, the birth of Muhammad or the rise of Islam or the death of Muhammad or any other things in terms of these important events in the life of Islam or the standard Islamic narrative, there is a huge time gap, and that's what we are trying to focus on. With me here to unpack all of this, as always, Dr. Jay Smith. Dr. Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So what about the geographical location of these witnesses?
Yeah, and this is hugely important because if they're going to be trustworthy, and Muslims are always asking us that to trust their worthiness, and they trust them all the time automatically. They have to. They really don't have a choice. You would hope that these eyewitnesses or these witnesses would actually be in the same location where Muhammad lived, would be there where Muhammad grew up and also where he was saying the things he was saying. Mm-hmm. So let's go to the screen and let's bring up the difficulty with this the standard Islamic narrative. Now, what the standard Islamic narrative says is that everything about early Islam took place where you see these two green circles, Mecca and Medina. Mecca at the bottom, Medina above it. They're in what we know is really the western part of the Hijaz, central part of Arabia. So west central part of Arabia. This is where you grew up.
That's right. I mean, I grew up very close to Mecca, and also Medina wasn't that far.
You grew up right on the Red Sea, so you're right next to, what, about 30 miles, 40 miles away?
I mean, I would say it's about 45 minutes drive, so I would say about, 50 miles, give or take,
Okay, so very close. Mecca is inland. Medina is, what, about a day's drive?
No, I mean, it's 2 hours drive, really.
Oh, it's a 2 hour drive.
Far,
Okay,
so we're talking 200 miles.
It's good to have you here.
Take, yeah.
Because now you have modern highways and you can zip right up. Yeah. Back in the days, they would probably take a week to get up there by camels. But certainly that's where everything takes place, right there where those two green circles are. Now, we're all told that the writers of the tradition did all their writing in Baghdad. That's the red circle there. So Baghdad is 1,200 miles away. That's rather curious. If all of these people were living at the time of Muhammad, they should have been writing in Medina. Am I correct?
That's right.
But they're writing in Baghdad.
Yep.
Why are they writing in Baghdad and not Medina?
We're looking at north now versus the south.
But why are they writing in Baghdad and not Medina?
That's a good question. You wonder why. Obviously, we talked about the Abbasides, and that's a huge, huge center for them.
This was their capital.
That's right.
They're writing in Baghdad because that's where the Abbasides were headquartered. They were all headquartered in Baghdad. So they do all their writing in Baghdad. But that's not where they grew up. Let's look and see where they grew up. So let's start with Ibn Hisham. He's the one that writes the Sirah, which would be the first to write down the biography. He does this in 833, so roughly 200 years after the fact. He was born in Basra, but he grew up in Cairo. So he was born here in Basra and moved over there to Cairo. Now let's look and see how far Cairo is. Cairo is about 990 miles from Mecca, and Basra would be about 1,200 miles from Mecca. So you can see immediately there's a difficulty.
Right.
And tell me, looking at that, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, the thing is, Ibn Hisham writes about Muhammad as if he almost knew every single detail about the life of Muhammad. Yet, like you stated it, he wasn't even living in Mecca.
No, he wasn't even living in Mecca. Let's go to Al-Bukhari. So Al-Bukhari is the one that knows more about him because he is the first to write down everything he said. And as we have said, to know how to walk, talk, eat, drink, sleep, you need to go to the Hadith. Take a look at where he was born. Bukhara.
Bukhara. That's why he's called Bukhari, by the way.
No, from Bukharistan. Or Bukhara, sorry. Now, Bukhara is today in Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is a good 2,600 miles away from Mecca. So there's no way in the world that he was living or grew up in where Muhammad was living or grew up, right?
That is true. And all he did is he collected sayings about him. At least that's what he stated. That was the purpose of his writing, to collect as many sayings about Muhammad as possible, result in about 600 plus thousand.
600,000 that he was given.
Eliminated most of them for fabrication.
7,397, which is only 2%.
That's right.
He threw out 98% and only retained 2%. And yet look where he lived, way up here in Bukhara. He did all his work in Baghdad. So that should question as to how could he know what really Muhammad said if he never lived down there, if he never knew him. But we're going to get to that. Let's just use one more person. I want to bring up Al-Tabari here, and Al-Tabari is the one that's credited with the introduction of the Tafsir and the Tarikh. He was born in Tabaristan. Tabaristan is 1,700 miles away from Mecca. And Tabaristan is what is today Iran. That would be in modern-day Iran. Basra would be modern-day Iraq, so would Baghdad, and Cairo would be modern-day Egypt. Bukhara would be modern-day Uzbekistan. These are much, 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 much further north, are they not?
Absolutely. And here's another interesting twist, but I'm not going to really jump ahead of myself here. But you think Shia, that's the area where they're concentrated.
Okay, we're going to get to that now. Yeah. So the conclusion, none of the traditional writers lived or worked in Mecca or Medina. They were too far to the north of Mecca and came from the west and the eastern part of Baghdad. Getting back to your point, let's look at the second one. All of these northern areas are where the Abbasids originated from. This is all Abbasid territory. Okay? All Abbasid. And that's why I put Abbasid there on that first timeline at the very beginning of the episodes. We wanted to put that there because everything we know about this character named Muhammad, about what he did, what he said, does not come from that area. It all comes from where the Abbasids. So this is an Abbasid narrative. Let's look I want to look at one other graph. Let's take a look at this map here. This is the problem with the northern hegemony. I'm just going to show you everything we have assumed, again, happens in Mecca, Medina. That's what the standard Islamic narrative. But take a look at this. Watch and see what I'm going to do now. All of the writers, the traditions, worked in Baghdad, which is 1,120 miles too far north. Do you see that? That gives you, it solidifies what we're talking about, that northern hegemony. Notice that. All of these northern areas are where the Abbasids originated from and dominated. So that's all Abbasid territory. The Abbasids come to power in 750. All their writings are written in 833, 870, 923. So we're talking about 70 to, if they come to power in 750 and Bukhari is writing in 870, that's 120 years later, and Al-Tabari would be another 30 years after that. So, furthermore, take a look at this timeline down here. I'm putting these two together now. All the writers of the traditions worked in the 9th and 10th century. So, conclusion, they all wrote their material hundreds of miles too far away up here and hundreds of years too late. Hundreds of miles away and hundreds of years too late.
Right.
Tell me why that's a problem.
Well, it is a problem, like we said. I mean, first, geographically speaking, they didn't even make it to live in the area where allegedly Islam began. Number two, they wrote at time that you don't even have eyewitness account where they can go and even investigate things. Like Luke, for instance, he said he went and investigated things from eyewitness. There were people living at that time who told him things because the time span was so short. But here, they are relying on others who said something from others, who said something from others. I mean, if you and I right now would write a book, let's say, hypothetically speaking, write a book about anything that took place, let's say, 100 years ago, and we say we're relying on 3 or 4 people that narrated this to us, I guarantee you, Jay, that people will be attacking that book.
Yeah. As Christians, this has been demanded of us. They have demanded of us that we want to know, how can you prove that Jesus did what he did and said what he said, and that Christianity began in that time period at that place with these people? And we said willingly, that is a good question. Remember, the Tübingen School and also Wellhausen in the 1800s, We're talking 150 years ago. We're asking these kind of questions. We don't trust the New Testament record. We don't really. In fact, Schweitzer, he even said, did even Jesus exist? Is there anybody called Jesus? So we had to go back to. Off the top of my head, I'm just trying to think. We had to go back to Josephus, who is a Jewish historian. We had to go back to Tacitus, who is a Roman historian. We had to go back to people like Phlegon and Thallus, who were Greek historians. They were writing about it. Thallus and Greek were writing within 52 AD. That's 20 years after Christ's death. Tacitus was writing at the end of the first century. That's why he's important, because he was a Roman historian who hated Christians. He was a hostile historian. Josephus was in Rome writing about it at the end of the first century, beginning of the second century, and they all refer to Jesus Christ. They refer to where he lived, where he was born, where he died.
And Josephus didn't even follow Christ.
No, none of them.
Which is important. I mean,
notice none of these that I've just listed followed Christ. Yeah. They were hostile to Christians. Thallus didn't, Phlegon didn't, Tacitus didn't, Josephus didn't. None of these followed Christ. And so we were forced to do that. Now we're asking the Muslims the same thing. Do not give us Al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Ibn Dawud. Don't give us Al-Tabari. These guys are all too late and they're too far away. These are all Muslims. Give us support outside of Islam, because we don't trust them anymore. Just look at this map again. That's too far in the north, and that's too far distant. Too far north and too far distant. Too far away and too late. And that's why we're going to say to Muslims, come up with something better than that. You've got to come up with somebody who was living in the same place Muhammad lived, there in the Hijaz, Mecca and Medina, and was writing in the 7th century. That's what we're asking. Now, to do that, we're going to have to go to the place. And what we're going to do next, what I want to do now, is go to Mecca. Let's just go down to this area where I have on the map right here. These two cities, Mecca and Medina. And let's look and see what we can now find about especially Mecca. Because without Mecca, everything else comes crashing down.
Amen. Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, we'll talk about the place. Have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, Sira International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.